But yeah, let's go to our next speaker. Our next speaker will be Randy Silver. Randy has experience leading high-performance teams at Amazon, Sainsbury's, HSBC, and specializes in building strong product cultures. He's passionate about empowering teams to ask better questions, driving faster progress. And he hosts the Product Experience podcast, so probably you have heard eventually one of his episodes. I'm actually going to be the next guest, right? I'm confusing some, whatever. And he's the author of the book, What Do We Do Now? And also today we'll talk about that exact question in his talk, What Do We Do Now? How to deal with the rise of AI and LLMs. Let's make some noise for Randy Silver.
Thank you very much. Right, so this talk is only 15 minutes long. It wasn't originally designed to be that short, so I'm going to go fast. There is a QR code and a link at the very end, so if you miss something, do not worry. But the question we have here, what do we do now? As Maito said, wrote the book a couple of years ago, wrote it at the beginning of the pandemic, because a bunch of my friends were calling me as soon as COVID got announced and lockdown got announced, and they all said, well, in a slightly more extreme way, what do we do now? What the hell do I do now? And I had a good chat with them. We talked about a bunch of different things, and they felt pretty good about it. So I sat down to write a blog post, and that turned into a whole bunch of blog posts, and then that turned into the book. And a couple years later, I realized the book was about dealing with something that was an extreme event. And that seems to happen a lot more often than we think. So, same basic idea. We're going to talk about what to do, how to apply this to the rise of AI and LLMs. So this is not going to help you to build an AI product. This talk is designed to help you when your boss comes in and says, what's our AI strategy? What are we doing next? In 15 minutes, hopefully you'll have a good answer to that. So, obviously, we all start with a plan. Plans are good things. But, in the UK, we have these pantomimes that we do at Christmas time, and there's always a baddie at some point, and everyone in the audience screams, it's behind you. It is behind you. Right now, the thing that's behind me and behind all of us is ChatGPT and AI and LLMs. This is the scary thing at the moment. But we have dealt with scary things before. We've dealt with this a lot over the years. There is a playbook for this. We dealt with it, I'm old, not all of you are this old. When Google had this logo and they first came out, it scared the hell out of a lot of people. When Amazon had this logo, it scared a lot of people. And when the first iPhone came out, it changed things radically and scared people. It did not work out great for everybody, but there is a playbook of how to deal with this. And I just want to do one brief note about language. Language is important. Some people call this a disruption. Some people call it an acceleration. There's a great business professor named Clayton Christensen who decided all these things were accelerations. I totally see the logic, but on the other hand, when you're the person that a competitor has just done something really radical to, it really feels disruptive. So I'm going to use the terms interchangeably. Do not worry about it. This is the most important thing, though. Do not panic. Panic is bad. And in fact, you're the best person in the room. You're the best person in your company to heed this advice, because everyone else is at some point going to panic. Doesn't mean you can't, but you should probably go into a small room, close the door, have your panic there, and then come out and be the person who's not panicking. And I know you can handle it. I know you can handle it because you already have all the tools to deal with this, and you can handle it because you're here today. And if you're here today, that means you're interested in doing your job well, and you're interested in doing your job better. So you have the tools, and there's very little I'm going to say in the next 10 or 15 minutes that is going to be new to you. But what's going to be valuable is I'm going to remind you of some things, and hopefully you will use it. So first thing, if you've ever been a scout, you know this is really important. Always be prepared. But what does that mean for us? For us, it means we should go back to basics. So the basics that we need to deal with applying what you know about discovery to strategy, working with your teams and your partners the same way we do with our customers, and reviewing the roadmaps, the priorities, and how we work. And there's only 4 things that really matter when you're doing product development. And they all start with the letter P, so it's definitely a model, right? Yeah. So the 4 things are priorities. Do you know what's important to work on? Are people actually working on that? And are they not working on things that are not important right now? Critically, once you know that, do you have the right people to work on that stuff? Are they empowered to do it? Do they have the permission to do it? Do they have the capabilities? Are you investing in them to help them do it? Then you have to make sure that there are processes in place, the right processes in place that are enablers for them. Things that help them get value out the door. Doesn't matter if your processes are there to create more bureaucracy and to do things that help internally if value does not get shipped. If you're spending all your time reformatting information to go to 6 different stakeholders in 6 different report styles, but it's the exact same thing, you have bad processes. These things are table stakes. The most important thing that underpins all of them, though, is the perception of everyone around you. Do they all agree that these first 3 things are being done well? If you think they're being done well, but sales doesn't, you're failing. You need to make sure that everyone agrees on these things. Right, so when you have this kind of disruption, habits change. Habits are very hard to change. I mean, I've been trying to diet properly for I don't know how long. It's really hard to change habits. Changing customer habits is really hard. But when something like an AI and LLMs come out, habits change. There is a disruption in the market. There's something in evolutionary biology called punctuated equilibrium. Punctuated equilibrium. Jeez. Punctuated Okay, I'm giving up. Moving on. This is something where things are static and something new is introduced to the environment and everything changes. There's a point in the fossil record, it's called the Cambrian explosion, where things were static. They were pretty much the same for millions of years. And all of a sudden, there's an incredible explosion in diversity of life. The thing that changed was only theorized about 20 years ago, in the last 20 years. It was the development of sight, of vision. And it totally changed the way that animals could hunt, and it changed everything. And rapid evolution was needed. Rapid diversification was needed. Not every technology change is a punctuated equilibrium. It sometimes feels like it, though. So we're at a point now where we've had this massive, something that feels like a massive shock. So how do we deal with it? There's lots of opportunities out there, but we may need to evolve. So first thing, obviously, we know this, right? You have to know your customers. What's happened with them? What's going on? So the way we do that is to talk to them. This seems really basic, doesn't it? But talking to them is actually the wrong way of putting it. Talking to them is good, gets you out the door, it gets you speaking with them. But if you're the one doing the talking, then you're not going to find out what's changed to them. What we really need to do is listen to them. And listening is really important because we're not always very good at it. We like talking. And the kind of listening we do too often is this kind of listening. We need to actually pay attention. Active listening is a really core component, and we need to pay attention. What you're listening for when you're dealing with your customers, especially at times like this, are these things. You're listening for what is your customer's current situation? How might that be different from the situation as you understood it previously? And finally, what habits may be affected or changed by this situation? You want to know what's different than before. It may be a lot, might not be much. That is critical to understanding what decisions you're going to make. Once you've got that from them, you then have to do a market analysis as well. You have to really understand what's changed in the rest of the market. So what are your competitors doing? But also, what is your customer's perception of what the market looks like? So this is a model called Wardley mapping. It's insanely complicated. Has anyone here ever, actually, okay, yeah, one person, is it complicated? Yeah, it's really hard. But there are many other ways of doing market analysis. What you're really looking for, though, are opportunities. What are the dimensions that you're going to compete on? And there are lots of different ways to do this. You do not have to be successful at every single aspect to differentiate yourself and make yourself the best choice for some of your customers. You can compete on price or quality. You can compete on availability or features, usability, service. You can even just compete on the perception of these things sometimes. That one doesn't always last as long, but if you have an amazing sales team and you're in B2B, sometimes that's enough. Sad, but true. Right. Once you know all that, you have to figure out what's going on with your roadmap. Is it actually changed? Because these perceptions, the perceptions of your customers, are important. So you have to figure out what you're going to do there. So let's talk about strategy. So we have already talked about all this. I'm going to go really fast. You need to know your customer and know the market. We've covered that. What you're going to do with that is a series of bets. This is everything we do in agile and iterative development. The hypotheses are experiments which you would prioritize. And a hypothesis, very simply, it's a fact plus an assumption. I know this. If I add this to it, if I do something else, I think this will happen. Problem with that is that assumptions sometimes are not just information. Sometimes they have emotions attached to them. And when you have an emotion attached to it, it's really hard to talk to other people about it. They get ideas, they get locked in on these things. So now you're dealing with your CEO coming to you and say, what's our AI strategy? And you may say, well, we don't really need one right now. It's not relevant to us. It's not relevant to our customers and expectations. But they are afraid. And they're afraid because they've got sentiment and other things locked into this, and you're not sure what to do next. And you can't just fight this with information. You have to understand why they're afraid and why the emotion is there and how to engage with them. One way is to make active decisions with them. And I talked to Lauren Sony, who's a VP of product at Forbes a while back. She's going to be a guest on our podcast soon. And she was talking about what they did with AI. This may not be the right thing for you, but the fact that they had this conversation at a leadership team level is critical. We took a deliberate stance to be fast followers and not reactive. We agreed to be prudent and do our due diligence. So that when they see something, it doesn't mean that they're going straight in. They don't have to prioritize change right away. They have to prioritize discovery and learning and seeing what the rest of the market was doing. This is based on their risk tolerance, what's important to them, and what their appetite is for deviating from the roadmap as it is now. This is a leadership team discussion, but it's something that has to happen. It is not going to stop your CEO from coming in and saying, what's the strategy? But it does mean you have had some conversation with them in the past and a basis for saying, we're not pivoting right now because as we agreed, we're going to work this way. You have a chance with that at least. Okay, a couple more minutes. There's a lot of hype about AI. Some of it is true, absolutely. Some of it might not be. I read an article last week. Bing, even though they spent $10 billion on a partnership with OpenAI, is still stalled at 3% market share. The site traffic for ChatGPT is actually falling. Most companies are having trouble with this. There's a lot going on in the regulation in the courts with copyright. And strangely, and this is one I find really hard to believe, but I've actually experienced this, AI is getting worse at math. Just giving a basic math problem, sometimes it generates something that is predictive text rather than just the answer. So what can we actually do? We don't have a whole lot of time. I'm going to do this really quickly. I've got a community of chief product officers that I talk with on a regular basis. It's called CPO Circles. If you want to learn more about it, talk to me later. But this has been a big topic of conversation with us over the last few months. So I'll share some of the advice that we've talked about. I'm not going to go through all of these for time, but again, you can have the slides. I just want to talk about the second one. One guy was telling me his CEO set a target for generating 10,000 extra work hours within the company and gave this to the CPO and the CTO as a challenge. The 10,000 hours number was ridiculous. It didn't mean anything. It was pulled out of the air. It's a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. No one cared if they actually hit it, but it set a barrier, a level of expectation for how big the goal was. They didn't hit 10,000. They did hit multiple single unit thousands, though. They made a big difference in their company by doing things relatively quickly, relatively cheaply, and making themselves a lot more efficient. So there are a lot of things that you can do. Right, last couple of things. Once you have decided what you're going to do, it has to be very simple to explain. You have to be able to explain it to like to a 6-year-old. It has to be, we're doing this because we decided we're going to work in this way, and this is what we expect to get out of it. This is what the goal that we're going for, and the success metric that we expect to get. That way you can get everyone aligned around it. So, basic pyramid for this. Start at the beginning, you identify the opportunity space. You do that with the personas and market analysis, talking to your customers and market analysis, figure out how you're going to solve that problem for your customers, agree with the team how you're going to work on that, and finally, the execution. And when I say be deliberate, it doesn't mean be deliberate and slow. It means be deliberate and talk about how you're going to execute it. So, I'm officially in the red by 10 seconds. I think I'm okay. So I'll give you the QR code. I will be at the book stand at the booth afterwards with copies of the book. All profits from it go to charity, so you're welcome to come buy it and make a donation to MSF for the charity. And yeah, please do stay in touch. I'd love to talk to you more about this. Thank you very much.